What's up, y'all? It's J-Rock Show, talking Pac-12 conference preview today. JK, my man, what better way to start with than the Arizona Wildcats?
Wasting no time getting into it, I see JR. This is an interesting team in my book. They are starting 3 forwards. They're only starting 1 guard in Zane Davis. I like the freshmen they got in Davis and Yams. Juan Valentine, Theophilus Hilton. This is a very talented roster. But I think it's ultimately going to be the guard play that's going to be their downfall, especially come Hoops area. I can see this team being a team that really reeks of winning one game in March and then kind of bowing out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely a possibility, but I think one of the more underlying, storylines for Arizona coming into this season, starting up here in a couple of weeks, is Corey Yams. We all know what he can do on the defensive end of the floor, but even at the prep level, he was never really able to be a consistent offensive threat. So I think if he can kind of step up and be more consistent offensively at Arizona, which I really like him under Coach Tommy Lloyd's system, I think that puts the Wildcats in an even better position, possibly a little deeper into Hoops area, but it's all dependent on his consistency on the offensive end.
Definitely a talented roster. Not going to debate that. Just think they're more of a regular season roster to me, but not going to deny the talent there. Moving on to the next squad, let's talk about the UCLA Bruins, Pac-12 Conference champions for a year ago, home of Jalen Snow. What do you make of the squad, JR?
Jalen Snow, lottery pick, probably a top 10, if not top 5 pick. But I'm just not as high on this UCLA team as a lot of other people are. I like Blaine Kidd, I like Evangelos Mullins and Jalen Snow. Franklin Tyson, I think, is a nice addition. They've got a little bit of height, a good mix, not really any. Everyone's over 6 foot, so the height is very much average with, having it in places where you need it. But I'm just not as high on the Bruins as other people.
I think that's insane, honestly. I don't know how you can be low on this team. You got Jalen Snow, you got JJ Ortega, I'd say one of the 5 or 10 best guard duos in all of SimWorld U. You got Evangelos Mullins, you got with Gerald Carroll if he can stay on the court. Edmund Nesbitt, Franklin Tyson. This is a very strong roster where if I see them repeat in this conference, even make their way to the quad, I won't be surprised at all.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. On paper, to me, they are, a lot of the names jump out at you, but my gut instinct is just not leaning in a positive way with this bunch. But I will say this in reference to UCLA. I think they're the type of team whose season is only going to go one of 2 ways. They're either going to hit big time, winning 25, 30 games, or they're going to completely implode and be, well below 500. I don't see a lot of middle ground with this team. They're either going to be really good or really bad.
Yeah. Moving on from UCLA, staying in the state of California, let's talk about the USC Trojans. You have a first-year head coach in Eric Musselman, poaching him from Arkansas, but you also bring in 2 of the best defenders in SimWorld Prep in Gabe Pope and JMO. Bit of an inexperienced roster. Very interesting team to talk about, JR.
Yeah, definitely. JMO and Gabe Pope both are expected to start right away, give plenty of quality minutes. So I think that's definitely going to be beneficial for the Trojans. Gabe Pope, I could actually see kind of being one of their top options on the offensive end as well. As we saw it kind of towards the end of this past SimWorld Prep season, that he started to kind of really step up his game on the, not just the defensive end, but the offensive end as well. But outside of that, I have a lot of question marks offensively with this team. A lot of question marks.
Interesting. I think on the offensive end, there's no real established top option. Kentel Patterson, pretty solid, bit undersized. I'm not super high on this team. I think they're going to be near the top middle of the conference. But next, let's talk about the Utes. The Utah Utes. JR. Definitely an interesting squad. A little bit of size. All 5 starters known, but a lot more eyes are on next season for Utah with Bajarni Johnson coming in. But what are their expectations for the season coming up?
Utah is a team that, not a lot of the names are going to, scream out at you like, a Trey Turner or a Henrik Vekic or a Jarrell Beauchamp or even a Sky Durant, throw him in that mix. But this Utah team is a team that I feel like could still find a way to compete night in and night out. Like you said, they got a good mix of size, decent depth at every position, and just a lot of potential with this Utah team. And one guy I especially like, Tyshawn Bird, one of their incoming freshmen, bigger guard at 6'5", 225. He can really attack you in so many different ways. Can attack the opposition in so many different ways. So I'm high on Tyshawn Bird, and I think this Utah team could surprise some people.
Big fan of the big man duo there, but I think in a what I consider a very strong conference, they're not one of my true contenders. I think let's move on to Colorado, the Buffaloes now. Brotherly love is in the air. The Vaughn brothers are reunited. Will it be enough to return Colorado to Hoopsteria?
I could see Colorado making it back to Hoopsteria. Do I foresee them winning the Pac-12? Honestly, I don't want to go that far, but the Pac-12 I think is definitely a very wide open conference in my mind this season in terms of who can, win it. So Colorado definitely has the potential to. I think they're definitely going to rely on both the Vaughn brothers, right away. And Jaziel Mead as well, another very intriguing player to me. Another big guard, can score the ball, pretty much at all 3 levels. They've got great depth at the guard position. The one thing that does concern me is their size. Brian Vaughn is their tallest player on the roster at 6'9". Then you have Daryl Kreider at 6'8", 2 guys at 6'7", and those are your tallest guys. So I think that is the one area that does concern me with the Buffaloes. But we have seen plenty of times where small ball lineups can work.
Remember, it's also the Pac-12. It's not the Big Ten where big men are a little bit more prevalent.
True. Very true.
I don't love this team. I don't dislike it. Between Jaden Thomas and the Vaughns, I think they're a solid roster. I expect them to return to Hoopsteria. But I think it's time to move on to the most polarizing team in the conference, the Oregon Ducks. 20 wins last season, brought in a lot of freshmen. Dana Altman, you like what he's doing up in Eugene?
I definitely like what Dana Altman's doing. Bringing in Timothy Brown, who is definitely one of the more athletic, if not the most athletic recruit in the entire recruiting cycle from SimWorld Prep this past year. Payson Corbin, I think he could be one of the better big men in not just the Pac-12, but arguably SimWorld U. Jetson Halliday coming in that as a part of that freshman class as well. We've seen it plenty of times at the SimWorld Prep level to where he can just shoot the daylights out. So I definitely see him playing a very critical role with this team. A lot of youth, yes. Only having Corbin the one senior and the rest being freshmen and sophomores, but I still really like what this team has.
I agree. I think they're a little bit too inexperienced for me to be in on them as Pac-12 contenders this year, though I am high on Payson Corbin. I think Timothy Brown, Jetson Halliday, a lot of promise on this roster. I think they still might be a year out though. But next team to talk about, JR. Another intriguing one, the Washington Huskies. Finished below 500 last year, but brought in some fun new freshman pieces. Could the Huskies return to Hoopsteria with a new head coach in town?
I don't see Washington making it to Hoopsteria this season. I just, obviously look at their incoming freshmen, Tyshawn McGrady, had injury issues he battled with in the last 2 years. Latrell Bynum, very talented. But I'm just not a big fan of this Washington team. I think they lack somewhat of size. Not really any true bigs, what you see either on this roster. Seriously.
I really like the McGrady-Bynum duo. I like some of the freshmen they have in. This is another case of an inexperienced roster. This is like Oregon. Think this is another team where they're probably a year away from being true players in this conference. But don't be surprised if they make some noise. I'm higher on this Huskies team than others are. Things were bad with Mike Hopkins. Things I expect to be a lot better with Danny Sprinkle.
Yeah, without question. And moving on to Washington State.
Other side of the Apple Cup rivalry. I don't like this team, honestly. One of your main players on the offensive end is going to be J.D. Reyes, a guy who was pretty much relegated to a supporting role throughout his SimWorld prep career. I like Javante Russell and Travion Sherwood, but outside of that, I'm not super high on this team. They're pretty strong at the forward position, but they have no depth at guard and no guards where I'm really wowed by. So I'm definitely a bit skeptical on what this team is capable of this upcoming season.
And I have to disagree with you to an extent on Washington State. Do I think they'll win the Pac-12? No, but I am definitely very intrigued by this team. Asher Benedict can absolutely impact a game in so many different ways on both ends of the floor. J.D. Reyes, for SimWorld Asia Pacific, he wasn't really a top offensive option, but the versatility, and the potential is there for him to be a 3-level scorer. And this is one of my favorite incoming freshmen in all of SimWorld U, Travion Sherwood, 6'11", is one of the best stretch bigs in all of SimWorld U, I think, even as a freshman. We saw it at SimWorld Prep, he didn't shoot the three, in a substantial amount, but when he did, he was extremely efficient with that. And Jameer Somerville, another forward who I think could also kind of swing back and forth from the wing to the backcourt. I'm intrigued by this team, JK. I have to say, I am really intrigued.
I understand that. I understand the potential with Reyes. I do like Sherwood, though, and Javante Russell, so I'll give you that. From one side of the Apple Cup to the other, definitely some intrigue. But let's move on to the team that finished last in this conference a year ago, the California Golden Bears. I am not moved by this team at all. I don't think there's really anything to be excited for here outside of Jason Tata.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't see California winning more than 10 games this season.
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if they won more than 7, honestly.
I could very well see that. It's just very young team this year, only one senior, and they were already, like you said, bottom of the conference in last year. So I don't see really anything to be excited about with this Golden Bears team as well either. Just like, I'd have to say I'm in agreement with you.
And they don't have a single guard spot set in stone. Their guard play looks like it's going to be super lackluster. So I'm steering very clear of this team. Think they will be at the bottom. I think they will be the worst team in this conference. Not even going to sugarcoat it. But to our final 10th and final team in this conference, the Stanford Cardinal.
Stanford.
Any thoughts?
I mean, another team who I think is going to struggle a lot this season, like Cal. Another very young team. They also only have one senior. They finished 7th in the Pac-12 last season, 3 games above 500 at 18-15. I don't see them making a huge stride for improvement this year. If anything, I see them regressing. And yes, you got some talented freshmen in Emil Shackelford, Daquan Sheffield, Sunvu, and Marcellus Brungo. But without knowing how impactful and how efficient they'll be off the bat, I have to say, I'm not very high on the Stanford Cardinal team either.
At least with younger teams like Oregon, they have some established pieces like Payson Corbin. There is nothing to be excited about with this Stanford team. Daquan Van Cleve is like the only senior on the roster. I think he'll be solid, but this team, another one that doesn't really have high aspirations. I think we're going to see the two teams in that better California area, Cal and Stanford, kind of battle it out for last place in this conference. I think both are going to be pretty bad. At least Oregon has a semblance of potential this year. Neither of these two do.
I would have to agree with you there. And that's going to do it all for today on the J-Rock Show. JK, a pleasure as always. Next week we will wrap up the conference preview series talking about the SEC.
Definitely going to be a fun one. That's for sure.
For sure. Everybody smash the like button, get in the comments, tell us what you think, what you're most excited about in the Pac-12 or this entire SimWorld U season. JK, a pleasure as always. This has been JK and the Cowboy JR Storm on the J-Rock Show. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, SimWorld is the only place where you can see the game, be the game.